So let's look at the Truman presidency, 1945 to 1953. Let's just look at a few areas of it. It's known as the Fair Deal, his administration. This comes from a concept he articulates in his 1949 State of the Union address. This is in January of 1949, 3 months after he had won re-election against Dewey, right there in the newspaper. So that newspaper is wrong, obviously. That's why he's holding it up and laughing. Truman is going to, in 1949, call for many programs which he had basically advocated for as the nominee of the Democratic Party. The 1948 Democratic Party platform he runs on against Dewey, and also some breakoff groups of the Democratic Party, is going to be the Fair Deal. He's going to run on that. Civil rights. Universal health care, right? Explicitly calling for the first time, a major party calling for universal health care. Public utilities. Expansion of the New Deal, expansion of the welfare state, of safety nets, of the robust federal government, right? And he's going to win on that. And so he's going to give the State of the Union outlining some things. First, civil rights. It should be noted that his position at this point on civil rights was influenced by a finding in October 1947. A committee on civil rights for the federal government released a study they did about, civil liberties in the country, segregation, whatnot, and it's called To Secure These Rights. Prior to that, that's October. That's the end of the baseball season. The beginning of the baseball season, right? Baseball begins in April, ends in October. So on April 15th, tax day, yay, at Ebbets Field, which is the stadium in Brooklyn, the Dodgers used to play at, the Brooklyn Dodgers. Jackie Robinson is going to play first base. He's going to come out of the dugout in a Dodgers uniform. First Major League Baseball player in this century, right? Baseball became segregated around the same time, Plessy versus Ferguson. And he's going to play he's going to go 0 for 3. He's not going to get a hit. He is going to go on to win Rookie of the Year, have a lifetime batting average of 293, almost 300. Jackie Robinson had gone to UCLA. He had served in World War II. He had gone through the Negro League system a little bit, gone through the minor league system with the Dodgers, played first base. Before To Secure These Rights is published, and this is almost a decade before the Brown versus Board and the Southern Christian Leadership Coalition, bus boycotts, everything, right? This is 7 years before anybody even knows who Martin Luther King Jr. is. Jackie Robinson, even before this federal investigation to secure these rights, Jackie Robinson, secure these rights, which states, Truman reads this, and when commenting on Washington, D.C., it states that Washington is the nation's capital, but also it is the point at which all public transportation that goes from north to south becomes Jim Crow, becomes segregated, right? You're going from New York to Atlanta. When you hit D.C., it's a southern city. It's in between Maryland and Virginia. That's when you first realize you are in an unequal. Like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations in 1948. Right? This idea of human rights, and various African American organizations, leaders are going to consider. The idea of going to the United Nations to complain about their treatment by the U.S. government. We talk about Saudi Arabia or Iran or Egypt, Gaddafi or Mubarak or Pol Pot, Saddam Hussein. We talk about human rights violations, Castro, but think about various groups throughout the late 19th and 20th century for this class that have that were tarred, feathered, and lynched and disenfranchised, and put in separate schools and put in segregated neighborhoods. Targeted physically, sexually, all sorts of stuff, right? So this idea of the UN not just looking at places like making sure Germany doesn't go back to a National Socialist Nazi thing, or making sure Russia or whoever, but looking at the United States also. So civil rights, also maintaining the collective bargaining rights, union rights from the New Deal, the Wagner Act, which are severely curtailed by a Republican Congress under Taft-Hartley. Solidarity strike, for example, if you're a secretary for a school district and you go on strike, I as a teacher go on strike in solidarity. That's not allowed. You know, whether or not you think that. So those are some areas where, as far as Truman goes, foreign policy, for only person to ever drop nuclear weapons, right? Korea, you know, this idea of Truman losing China, of not wanting to let the other countries go communist. So having a foreign policy of containment, but you know, combating communism in various places, trying to contain it in North Korea. Greece, supporting some undemocratic people in places like Greece in order to prevent a socialist takeover there, a communist regime there. But as far as domestic policy goes, one of the most progressive platforms, the 1948 Democratic Platform in history, the most progressive, the most left liberal up to that point. And then probably surpassed by definitely the 1972 Democratic Platform. And then the one from 2016, because of Bernie Sanders' substantial contribution, arguably, that one also is very liberal. But of course, if you're conservative, you probably don't like that, so that's cool. Right? They would argue that national health care, these things are economic issues that the government should not have say over, and that really just sort of tie us in to some sort of federal system and imprison us in some way. To this idea that there's a Cold War, that there is a Soviet Union, that there are spies everywhere, that, you know, yada yada yada, that anybody could be a Red, a commie, a Soviet, creates a Red Scare similar to the one after World War I. This one takes on a few individuals and organizations that go for several years. One is the House Un-American Activities Committee, which had existed it was created in the 1930s, and initially did investigate groups like the Ku Klux Klan, right-wing groups, left-wing groups, not just, you know. But after after World War II, in the early years of the Cold War, really targets suspected communists, suspected socialists. A lot of these folks were people that had gone to a socialist meeting or been a part of an organization during the Spanish Civil War, during the Depression, right? They were in a union, they went to some socialist meetings, something like that, you know? And this is 20 years later, you know? And they're, you know, in Hollywood, people are blacklisted. In the government, people are fired and blacklisted. The House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC. And they're going to actually continue through the 50s and into the 60s. This is actually the organization, though, in the 1930s where we get, when I mentioned the business plot in chapter 21's lecture, the plot to overthrow FDR. A lot of the research, the stuff we know about that plot that never happened, is from HUAC investigations in the 1930s. House Un-American Activities Committee. That sounds really bad, right? The Committee on Public Information from World War I. House Un-American Activities Committee. Just call it the Real America Committee. Real America Test. Fuck yeah. And then Senator Joseph McCarthy. These two sometimes are mixed together. In this general Red Scare, and in general having congressional hearings where people are accused of being communists or formerly being communists, and have their names dragged through the mud, and are blacklisted, lose their jobs, sometimes their lives are ruined. There's HUAC, House Un-American Activities Committee, and then there's Joseph McCarthy, who's a senator. There's an easy distinction, right? The House of Representatives, House Un-American Activities Committee, and Joseph McCarthy, who is a senator. Different branches of the legislature, different houses of Congress, chambers of Congress. And Joe McCarthy is a Republican from Wisconsin. And he is going to basically accuse the State Department of having communists working in the State Department. And it's going to be complete bogus. He's going to basically make up numbers as he goes along. You know, like, oh, there's 250 card-carrying members of the Communist Party in the State Department. Or 1,000, whatever. 178. He'll change it all the time. He's kind of like our current president, actually. And then you have the Dixiecrats. Dixiecrats are an example of a conservative breakoff of the Democratic Party. You call it conservative. It's basically that southern wing of the Democratic Party, that southern white wing, that bolts from the Democrats in 1948 when their platform includes civil rights. Right? And there's some objections to some of the other things like healthcare, public utilities. Civil rights is the main thing. Right? The idea of subverting the racial hierarchy or ethnic hierarchy, the white supremacist society that has been existing in the South, it's been existing in the West Coast with whites and Asians and Latinos and whatnot. So it affects lots of different places, right? So when Truman embraces this civil rights concept, he himself a Southerner, he himself known for using racial slurs, used two nuclear weapons against Japan when he arguably didn't have to. It's debatable. But supports civil rights, and there's this Dixiecrat bolt from the party. They don't do well in the 1948 election, and they sort of come back into the Democratic Party. But this is like a writing on the wall. That if you do, there's the Southern veto from the 1930s we talk about. This idea that we can't really challenge the segregation of the South without risking losing this voting bloc from our party, the Democrats, the white Southerners. Right? This is a sign that yes, that's going to happen. If you push for civil rights, we will leave. We will find a new party. This is 1948. In 1964, it's really going to happen with the Civil Rights Act. We talk about that later.